Hi everybody, Harlan Kilstein here, and I'm here to talk to you about stuffed cabbage. That's right, stuffed cabbage. You're probably watching this video on the recipe page, and there's a story about this stuffed cabbage which is really funny. It was a family heirloom recipe, and it was passed down generation to generation. And at some point, I was probably about 5, 6 years old. And my father told my mother that he wanted her to learn the recipe. So she had to go to my grandmother's house to learn the recipe. And I remember my mother took a notebook and she had a pen and she was going to write things down. And my grandmother was a very old-fashioned cook. And you add in some meat. How much meat? I don't know how much meat. Add a package, 2 packages. If you want a lot, you add 2 packages. If you want a little, you add 1 package. And my mother's writing down 4 pounds of meat and a cabbage. How big a cabbage? You got a cabbage, you know. You want a lot, you make a big cabbage. You want small, a little cabbage. Okay. My mother writes down 1 medium-large cabbage. And my grandmother starts, showing her how she does everything and assembling things. And the original recipe was made with honey. And my grandmother picks up a jar of honey and she says, and then add this much honey. And she picks up the honey and she turns it and starts shaking the honey out. And my mother goes, well, how much honey is that? And my grandmother goes, I don't know, it's that much, down, whatever, that's it, you put the honey in. And my mother is starting to get frustrated because my grandmother didn't cook with like teaspoons and tablespoons of this and half a cup of this. She poured it in, just that amount. And my mother left with just a couple of lines written in her book, and she was just very, very frustrated. But she came home and she started making stuffed cabbage. I believe she added the final step, which was after the stuffed cabbage was done and cooked, she sprinkled it with brown sugar and put it back in the oven to crisp it and to make it even sweeter. It's already a pretty sweet recipe. So one day, my ex-wife decided that she wanted to learn how to make stuffed cabbage. So she showed up at my mother's house, and she had her notebook and everything ready, and my mother said, okay, so you start off with meat. How much meat should I start off with? She goes, I don't know, you want a lot of meat? Yeah, big package. Same thing. Came to pouring the honey in. How much honey is that? Is that like a half a cup, a quarter of a cup, a whole cup? My mother went, no, it's like this. And she pours it in and like this. And she went down and up. And my ex ended up with almost nothing on that piece of paper. Now, here's the funny part. My ex was not a cook. So I decided to learn how to make the stuffed cabbage. And I went to my mother and I said, we're making stuffed cabbage. And before she did everything and poured it in, I grabbed it and measured it. And that's how we got the recipe that you're looking at today. So this recipe is an authentic recipe. I'm sure it goes back more than 100 years. I hope you enjoy it.